Welcome to One Soccer. Today, I'm Gareth Wheeler alongside Oliver Platt and Jordan Wilson as our season in review series rolls on here on One Soccer as we take a look and reflect upon the year that was in 2023 from each and every Canadian club side. So today's topic, today's side that we dissect, it's a good one. It's a feel-good story in Canadian football, the Halifax Wanderers. New blood in terms of a lot of new players and a new manager under Patrice Geyser brought new heights to the Wanderers, a club that really struggled to score goals, especially in 2022. Just 24 goals scored over the entire season. They had 15 more in 2023 on their way to finishing joint second place, technically third place in the Canadian Premier League table, clinching and qualifying for the playoffs for the first time over the course of a normal non-tournament year in Canadian Premier League history. And unfortunately, their season came to a premature end, falling out or losing to Pacific at home, getting knocked out of title contention in the Canadian Premier League. As we do for each and every team, it's time to give them a grade as a throwing off point here. So Professor Platt, Professor Wilson, let's go all show our grades, what we're going to give Halifax Wanderers for the 2023 campaign. 3, 2, 1, reveal.
Oh,
Hey, B.
Halifax, well done.
I thought that was a B minus,
plus?
Jordan, for a second there. B plus.
No. B plus.
Ahoy.
Ahoy.
I love look.
Ahoy.
You guys are clever, man.
I was gonna put R, but I was told they're not pirates; they're privateers, which I still don't know the difference between. By the way, explain. We'll go with the lower grade. Let's start with Jordan.
Yeah.
Just a B plus. Why wasn't it A quality for you?
And you know what? In grand scheme, I think this season, for many reasons, of course, you could give them an A minus. But I think I'm just going off of the last little bit. I think with this team, they're probably the most informed team outside of Calgary going to playoffs. So you're almost expecting them to be in a final. Look, I will never say this wasn't a successful season for Halifax. In every way, shape, or form, it absolutely was. The B plus, the reason why it wasn't an A minus was just off of the last game. That's it. I think a team that dominated possession, definitely in almost every game they played. The type of players that they had, the Nimics, the Ferens, the Caligaris, Aiden Daniels, I thought at times was exceptional this season. But for no one to show up at the end, I know football is unlucky, right? Post, crossbar, and all these little things, but that's what kind of tipped the scales for me. If they ended up showing up in the end, that was a star performance. But they get a B plus for me, which I still think is a good grade.
Recency bias. This team, Oliver Platt, was absolutely screwed by some rule about away goal differential being the deciding matter that put them from second to third. This had to be an A. You won 2 A's for whatever reason.
Double A.
Go on and give Patrice like a battery, fully charged. Go on and explain your take on Halifax's season.
I just don't think if you're a Halifax fan, you could have expected that season to go much better than it did. I know obviously the obvious answer is winning in the playoffs, and particularly winning a home playoff game when you have a game that you feel like you should win against Pacific, right? I get that disappointment, but when you just look at the season as a whole, you know, a 13-point jump from 2022, the players that you had in this team, some of the signings they made and the impact they made was tremendous. The football that this team played, the big wins they had at the Wanderers grounds. Like I think Halifax fans were spoiled this year, to be honest with you, with what they witnessed. And again, when we think about the transition from one manager to the next, with a lot of changes in the squads, you know, with Jaume Morelli only coming back obviously midway through the season, I just don't know that you can realistically expect that transformation to happen much quicker than it happened in Halifax. These things don't happen overnight. They take time and work. And I thought the work Patrice Geyser did and the front office in Halifax as well, the work they did was tremendous this season to turn this team into a team that was capable of beating absolutely anyone on their day and looked like a top team in the Canadian Premier League.
Spoiled. I think that this is finally normal service is picked up. Like it's a club that's well run, a club that whose fans are exceptional, and I think that they hope that this is normal practice now. Remember, with so much great change, this team didn't win their first game in the Canadian Premier League till June 10th. then went on a run and really took off. They were the Drawnderers to start the season, and you're just wondering, was Patrice Geyser up for it? And the answer has to be resoundingly yes. In terms of recruitment, players like Nimick and Farron really transformed this group, and that's just scratching the surface here. They're a completely different team at the end of the year from the one that started it. And again, if that rule was a little bit different in terms of its configuration, Halifax could have been in that 1-2 game, and perhaps things could have played out in a much different way. It was the style of play that stood out for me more than anything else with this Wanderers team, a team that was anemic. They were just absolutely dire in terms of their attempts to play attacking football. And this team was, over the course of this season, was right up there with the best of the best in the Canadian Premier League. Ollie, who is your star performer? Tough one, because there's multiple options to choose from here. Your star performer for the Wanderers in 2023.
Yeah, it's really tough to separate three players, I think, and very neatly you've got a defender, a midfielder, and a forwards who I think were the outstanding players for Halifax this season. They were Dan Nimick, Lorenzo Caligari, and Massimo Ferrin. If I have to pick one star performer as the top player for Halifax this season, I'll go with Caligari. I just think from pretty much from day one, to be honest, which is not easy as an international player coming into this league, he was the centerpiece to all of the things you talked about, Wills, in terms of the style of play and how this team operated. It didn't really work without him. I think they struggled to replace him in the very few minutes that he missed. And he just made this team tick. He gave them tempo, he gave them creativity. He was even impactful in the final third, as you're seeing in some instances in these highlights. He could play that killer ball as well as being the guy who dictated from deep. Brilliant at taking pressure in his own half and building out. I just think he was the one who was absolutely integral to the way they played and pretty much irreplaceable.
Jordan, do you have another pick, or is it
I
Caligari?
I do have another pick, and when I'm talking about Halifax with you guys, I'm like, ooh, I should have gave them an A minus. But look, the player that they really had a sensational
Such a big
season,
difference between B
right?
plus.
It's like two numbers. But anyways, my pick goes to Dan Nimick with 6 goals and 3 assists. Outside of that and those numbers and stepping up at the penalty spot, and it's just his leadership. It's not an easy league to come back to. The CPL, everyone's thinking, oh, okay, well, it's new and yeah, they're talented players, but like I know for me, even a thought was like, how great will this league be? Like how many players can go and perform? It's not easy as a center back to come in.
I love that
I know.
goal.
What a finish. It's class. To come into this league and to already assert yourself into a team that was needed a player like Nimick, needed someone to step up from the back and kind of control games. He offered it on both ends as well. Like he was a leader in the back and made huge blocks. If we did a highlight reel of the blocks and the saves that he did this season, that would also be as great as his goals. So I think it's all around. This is a player that Patrice Geyser will definitely hold on to. I know he signed again for going to the 2024 season. And for me, I'm projecting that'll probably be his last one because his age and the way that he plays, he can play at a higher level. He can move on. He was just exceptional this season. And for me, yeah, you could pick Caligari. You could pick a few other names. But Nimick stands out to me because the defender was just
best diagonal in CPL history.
Yeah, like he has that hit properly.
Shout out to Massimo Ferrin.
Come on.
Was exceptionally influential for a team, again, that just couldn't attack. He was a constant threat cutting in on that right foot. I mean, he was just so difficult to deal with. He gave Forge nightmares all season long. Patrice Geyser shopping in his own backyard with a player that he knew really well. This player is a prime example of what the Canadian Premier League can give to local Canadian player. I just thought he was brilliant over the course of the season and gave Halifax some necessary attacking swagger. An eventful year. Like Jao Morelli came in coming off a significant injury. He impressed. It was just really too bad. It was short-lived. They bring in Daniil Henry, Canadian men's national team player, adding even more swagger to the group. I just thought it was a really exciting season with so many wonderful storylines. If there was a disappointment, I mean, Jordan shared his about the way the season ends. Oliver Platt, what was the most disappointing element or aspect for you?
Away goal differential is definitely up there. That would be one. That might be known as the Halifax rule in the future if we see that changed going forwards. Obviously, the playoff loss at the Wanderers grounds. I'll go with something a bit different, though. I just think you just mentioned it, Wills. The mid-season signings I thought had all kinds of potential. When you look at Jao Morelli coming back, Daniil Henry, Jordan
Peruzza,
Peruzza,
yeah.
I'm just not sure that they quite took Halifax to the absolute next level to potentially win a championship in the way that they would have hoped. I don't think any of them did badly by any stretch. Morelli scored a few goals before, obviously, unfortunately, he got injured again. Peruzza had his moments. Henry, I think it was a bit tougher just to get that rhythm and fitness back. But you just felt, looking at the pedigree of those three players, that they could be real difference makers that took this team to a different level. And I'm not sure that necessarily happened in the way that they could have ideally liked to, again, take this team to potentially winning a championship.
Jordan, anything else to add?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with Ollie tenfold. I think the direction I'm going is just the context of Halifax Wanderers. For the past seasons, 2 seasons that I played, there's one name that you just could not ignore. Yeah, everyone talked about Morelli, but the one who really had their team ticking was Andre Rampersad. And looking at the lineup of this season, you're thinking, okay, now he has players that he can rely on and depend on and still be the big dog. And it's difficult because to gauge where you are in a team that has new talent coming in and it is your team, you want to figure out, okay, what is his role? Before, when the team wasn't as good, he had to be the guy connecting, getting the balls from center back, connecting with strikers. Now he has other players to do that. So where does Andre Rampersad fall? Disappointing is too harsh of a word, but I want to see more of that player that we've seen since the beginning of this league in terms of how dominant he could be in the midfield. I think he was a bit dormant throughout the season. I know also playing for Trinidad, like it's hard to get in the rhythm. He would go away, he'd come back. The team was doing well. But I just want to see the Andre Rampersad that we all know he could be. Because if you can get him playing his best football, mixed with a Caligari, mixed with a Farron, this is a team that could compete for a championship. They're 1 or 2 players short. And I think Rampersad, if he ups his level, could be the guy that connects this team and gets them to the top.
He was away on international duty when Halifax lost that playoff game, and now Canada, Trinidad, and Tobago with
Mm.
Rampersad upcoming in March for a spot at the Copa America. So it's not just the Nimics and Farrons and Caligaris that Patrice Geyser hopes to hang on to. Zachary Fernandez will fit that bill as well. There'll be teams looking at him, potentially wanting to bring him to the next level. But I mean, this is a team with a very bright future, trying to get a stadium project in place. Clearly, I think it's very important for a manager to build off what is a strong season with even more top recruitment this year. And who wouldn't want to play in Halifax? So, what should we expect in 2024, Oliver?
Yeah, I think this is one of the tougher ones to project just based on the time we're talking about the team and obviously a big off season to come. I think if they can bring back most of the core of last season's team, when you're talking about players like Nimick and Ferrin and Caligari, Fernandez as well, then they're going to be an instant contender to win trophies in this league next season. I think with these players with a year under their belt, with hopefully some strengthening coming into the squad, I think there's some flexibility in terms of the international spots and what they can do there. They'll instantly be regarded as one of the best teams in the league. If there is a ton of interest in guys who have had outstanding seasons in the CPL, and I think there could be, then maybe you have to do a bit more of a reset at the start of the season and integrate some newer players in key spots, and then it becomes a bit more difficult to predict. But as they are right now, they look very strong going into 2024.
What about you, Jordan?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. There's a learning curve though, right? I'm not expecting a sophomore slump. I'm expecting this team to be playing one of the last games of the season. I think their core is staying the same, right? And I think Patrice Geyser is the right man for the job
Yeah.
in terms of finding if they need a left back or if they need a right back or if they need a certain player and a certain profile, that he's the guy to find them. People nowadays want to play for a manager that feels like you're, family. It feels like your dad. Like this is what he's instilled in that group. So getting a Nimic Caligari, a second year in the CPL, know the travel, know the hotel, know what it's like match day -1. All these things they add. Those are percentages that will add up. I see them playing some of the last games in the season. They're quality. So I can't see anything different for them.
Expectations have changed. Probably could use some more competition at goalkeeper, another attacking player as well. But that seems like a lot of teams in the Canadian Premier League will be looking in that direction. And look, the under 21 rules coming back next season. And I'm sure Patrice Geyser is going to love me asking questions about not playing young players all next season as well. So lots to look forward to in Halifax. Their first ever playoff home date It was a special occasion. It was a party, and they continue to be a prime example of what communities across this country can be or should be when it comes to professional football. On behalf of Jordan and Oliver, congratulations to Halifax on the season. And guess what? Bigger expectations are coming next season. So get ready for it, Halifax.